Little known fact, Recycled Minds Comedy was established in 2002 and it's evolved from a local improv comedy troupe into an internationally in-demand team. They've left audiences in stitches around the world performing at prestigious events like the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, the world's largest performance arts festival, on cruise ships and at top-notch universities, and even for Fortune 500 companies. Recycled Minds guarantees side-splitting interactive performances suitable for all ages. But here's the twist. Recycled Minds isn't just about making you laugh. They're here to help you build self-confidence, enhance communication, and boost teamwork through their top-notch improv classes and corporate training programs. So whether you're a corporate team seeking to level up or just searching for a night of uncontrollable laughter, because we need that, head over to recycledmindscomedy.com because the world is in need of more humor and humanity. recycledmindscomedy.com. Have you ever wondered where your excitement in theater could actually take you? My next guest, Katie Eastman, has a passion for theater with over 15 years of experience in teaching, directing, and performing across stages from Kentucky to Idaho. And when she's not creating engaging experiences for kids at Rockharbor Church, you'll find her performing on the Recycled Minds stage. She's a proud graduate in theater, secondary education from Boise State University. Katie firmly believes in the transformative power of theater and storytelling to inform, encourage, and inspire all ages. Don't miss the chance to catch her in action during her upcoming improv comedy special with Dry Bar Unscripted. And this episode, it gets nutty. Ladies and gentlemen, Katie Eastman. Katie!
Hello!
Thank you so much for being on the podcast with me.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean. Seriously, this is such an honor. And I love you and I love everything you're doing with Recycled Minds, so it's just awesome to be a part of this process with you.
Well, to be honest with you, the honor is mine, and there's a couple things I want to talk to you about. One of which is the comedy special that you just have with Dry Bar.
Yes.
Before we dive into that, I'd love to, if you wouldn't mind sharing like the spark of what got you into where you're at right now. Like, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
So, because you're that funny person, who's like,
yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you, because you're often cast. So those of you who may not know, Katie is often cast in a plethora of comedy shows that we do at Recycled Minds, simply because you do these characters that are brilliant. You're so attentive. Besides being like one of the kindest people I know, you show up with this presence and power and velocity. You know what I mean? Where your characters are just like, they embody such energy and your ability as an actor to just flip the switch to where you can go really grounded and feel real as you're watching an improv show, and you're just like, dude, I see this person. You know what I mean? It's wild. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of like where this flame came from.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, ever since I was little, that I had this passion to perform. I mean, I can remember times when I was, really little with my cousins, and we're like, let's make up a play for our family. And I said like a weird line in a weird accent, and, the whole living room erupted. And I remember from that moment, I'm like, I want to do this. I love seeing people laugh and engaging people in a story. And so that was something that I continued to do, finding avenues that I could perform, whether it's in plays or musicals or in weird skits I would do in whatever club I was at. And so growing up, I pursued, anything I could do to get on stage. Went to college and decided, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to pursue acting. I want to go into this. And then I got to Boise State and was a theater major and realized the power of storytelling and being a part of theater. But also, I loved teaching and I loved working with kids. And so I thought the best marriage is having education with theater. And so continued to pursue that. And then when I got to the end of student teaching, I went, oh, I want to be able to teach more than just one area. And so went into community theaters and worked with the Shakespeare Festival and got to really experience all different ages and got to do acting and experience what it's like to tell stories. But that comedy side has always been there. You know, that's always where I've gravitated to, because I've seen the power that humor has for people, because they can connect to laughing at themselves, but also laughing at a situation that can be hard to talk about. And when you engage people in laughter and then you can share your message, it makes an impact. And so that's always something that I've really loved about comedy. And the physical comedy has always been my favorite too. So,
and it shows. Like your physical comedy is some of my favorites.
I love it.
There's something about your skill making a way for you, right? And I was just thinking about purpose when it came to talking with you.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where I was kind of interviewing people of like who to take to film these comedy specials in Utah. And you were at the top of this very short list, and hearing kind of just where you were in your work-life balance, you were about to take on like an assistant, and there was kind of a lot orbiting in your world, to where I was like, you know, maybe now isn't the time right now with Katie, because she seems like she's got a lot of other cool projects she's doing. So we start rehearsing, and you were not part of the rehearsals just yet. You were preliminary, like, hey, Katie, if we do this thing, are you available? And I kept hearing this voice that was like, Katie Eastman is not here. You're missing someone. You know what I mean? Like, and I think there's something about when you are purposed or designed to do something and you're in the sphere of influence, or you're around people, your skill makes way for you. Your gifting makes room for you. And I think we had like one other rehearsal, and it was so loud, I had to like leave the room and contact you and be like, hey, Katie,
that was
I know
so
this
cool.
is super short notice. By any chance, are you available to do this? And I called our artistic director. I was like, I think we have to have Katie Eastman on the show.
I remember that call because I know we had talked about that. And exactly what you said, I was in the season of like, I don't know, like if, you know, if I'm going to be able to commit to that, you know, with, you know, the job that I'm doing on Sundays, I'm, you know, working. And so it was one of those situations where I'm like, and I also, to be honest with you, I'm like, improv had been, I mean, yes, theater had been in my history. That had been always something I've done. And I've worked with improv in ways, but improv is newer, like doing full, like kind of the long form we were doing. And so it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't know if I'm enough for this. And I remember having that conversation with myself of like, this is scary, and it's a risk. But then it was incredible because when you were feeling that same call, the minute that you called me, I'm like, I can't say no to this. I have to figure this out, because this is an opportunity of a lifetime, and I don't want to miss out because of fear. I don't want to miss out because I am nervous about failing. And that was something that really struck with me of like, if I'm going to fail, let's fail big. That was something one of my professors always told me. He's like, if you're going to fail big. And so that is something that I remembered, and just stepping into this and you having that open-handedness of like allowing me to jump in. It was a wild ride, but incredible. Like one of those moments where I'm like, this is something that is going to impact me, not just the experience of going to and getting this cool opportunity, but the whole like mentality of jumping in and saying yes when you're scared, or jumping in and saying yes when you don't know the end of the line, you know? So that was an incredible opportunity. So thank you for giving that and for being sensitive to that too. You're
so welcome. Imagine if you didn't, right? I mean, the show itself would have suffered. We wouldn't have known it, because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
But I want our listeners to hear this, because I think a lot of us listening to this right now are in this place where we're unsure of doing something that's going to take some risk to do.
Yes.
And to your professor's point of like swinging for the fences.
Right.
Go big or go home kind of a thing. And Babe Ruth is not known for how many times he struck out. He's known for his home runs, right? And so you just got to step up to the plate and point to where you want the ball and just swing for the fences, go for out of the park.
Right.
And I think that's a great attitude to have. I mean, imagine you are talking to yourself and you're going back and forth, oh, should I? That kind of a thing. Like, what would you tell yourself? What would your pep talk be for yourself?
I think exactly what you said of like, think of it at the end of the line if you didn't do it. Or, you know, honestly, like, what is the worst that can happen? That is also another phrase that I've been using of like, so what is the worst that could happen? Okay, play that out. If that's the worst thing that can happen, is that worth it? Is that worth not taking this chance? Is that worth not stepping out in faith or, you know, taking that risk that could in turn open so many doors or so many different pathways that could lead to a bigger thing that God has in store, you know, that your path is. And so that was, you know, something I was listening to. Someone said this idea of like, people who are successful, they move forward, but they don't wait until they have everything perfect, until they've built up the skill or whatever to move to that place. Like, yes, that there's benefit in that, but it's also moving forward messy. That's been kind of a phrase of like just going forward, because that forward movement can take you to new heights.
Totally. Yeah, it gives you momentum and just allows you to keep on trucking and failing forward.
Yeah.
I love that. So how would you say you find motivation in difficult times? When times get tough, as life happens, right? Life goes off script. Things hit us hard. Is there a story or something you could speak to of like, what are those areas where you can share some motivation in a difficult time?
Yeah, I think there's so many times in life where things don't go the way you think they're supposed to go, or they surprise you. And the grounding part is, for me, is my faith. And knowing that this is not the end of my story, and that there is so much more than just me. And I think that internal perspective, it can cloud, when you're always thinking about yourself, that can kind of cloud your judgment. But when you realize like, oh man, there's so much more outside that you can make an impact with, and how you engage with people, and how, when you walk through those hard times, how you respond to that can make such an impact, not only to like the immediate people around you, but it can have a wave, you know, like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there has been a lot of times in my life where, you know, a couple years ago, my father-in-law experienced a stroke, and it severely impacted his ability to speak. And he was world-renowned speaker. Like, he would go around and speak to companies all over the world. And it really shocked, of course, not only, you know, the people who worked with him, but our family and the dynamic. And I just remember walking through that process, realizing like it doesn't always make sense why these things happen, you know, like why this is the specific thing that got taken away. But I've also seen how, you know, God had used that to make an impact, to bring us together, to watch him work through this, and to see how he continues to be make an incredible impact with just his personality without even words, but his care for people. I see how he's not turned it internalize it on him, but he's been able to, like, when you come in contact with him, you know that he's listening to what you're saying. It can be a look, it can be a touch, it can be just like being present with you. And that has been something so powerful to watch him do in spite of everything he's had to walk through. And I think that's one of those things that I would hope to live my life like, to be able to, despite the things I'm walking through, I can still look out. Yeah.
It seems that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. But that's just that's a mental decision that you have to make, of seeing like what is the why, what is the bright side here.
Right.
Like like things happen, you know. Sometimes things happen on purpose by bad people, you know.
Right.
There's you know, even what man does for evil, God makes for good, because he's the greatest improviser of all time, right?
Yeah.
So those moments that we find ourselves in where we're like, why, God, is this happening to me? Sometimes that's not the right question to ask, the why. It's more like, what are you going to do in this thick of it? Yeah. You know what I mean? And sometimes when you're there's that saying of like, when you're in hell, don't stop, keep going.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Just keep going.
Right.
Because it's got to get better, because all things work for good in the end. So if it's not good, it's not the end.
It's not the end. And you know what? He doesn't waste any of it. Like, that's something that I have felt so deeply. Like, no matter what we're walking through, like, he doesn't waste any of that heartache, because he can use that to glorify him in different ways. He can use that to help you connect to people that you wouldn't have connected with, because you're walking through people. Like, we met so many different people through the process of my, father-in-law's stroke that we would have never met. You know, people in the medical field that were so encouraged by his story, and or just other things I've walked through in my life, to be able to that connection and express like, man, I know how you feel, because I've walked it, walked through that same thing. And so it's incredible to see how, God doesn't waste any of that.
No, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you a question about like role that failures play in our life, and I feel like you kind of touched on a lot of that. I listen to like Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi and those guys.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of like, sometimes your worst days are your setups for your best days, right? And in part because of this redemption quality that the Creator has on each of our lives, where I just remember like in my own life, like some of the worst, most difficult, biggest struggles were as if, like, where I felt like I was flat on my back, just on the ground. And all I could do was look up. You know what I mean? And there is no waste in that. So for those of you who are listening and you're like struggle festing, it's just been tough. One, you're not the only one. And whenever you look at like incredible stories of people who've like risen up, whether it's Michael Jordan, who didn't even get picked on his high school basketball team, something happens in that process. It's like this worm that slithers away and creates this cocoon. Some magic happens in this closedness when you're alone, and you have to get through. Right. I've heard that like when a butterfly is going through the chrysalis, is if you stop and try to help it to open it, it actually won't get the strength it needs for the power in the wings. So it's like you've got to get through. You got to work it out, and you've got to get through the difficult stuff so that you can actually fly on the other side. Oh, that's such a good point. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think there's so many times where, you don't, like you've said, there's no win or lose. It's either you win or you learn. Yeah, right? And that has been something ringing in my head of like, okay, whenever it is, it's like, stop, you're in a struggle. What are you learning? Yeah. What is the thing that you didn't know yesterday that you now know today? Right. And
it does. It prepares you for that next step. I can look back in my life and see, whoa, this season where I was like, what am I doing? What is this purpose of like why I'm sitting in this job that I don't want to be in, or facing this really difficult relationship that I didn't think I would have to struggle through.
Right.
It just, you can look back on your life and see, oh, that's what I was being taught. Mm-hmm. He was strengthening me so that I was ready for this next chapter. Right. Or, oh, that relation taught me what I don't want. And now I'm looking for people who have this quality, and my relationships are stronger and deeper. Like, there have been so many times, like when we're facing hard stuff, to stop and remember what has happened in the past, because we've overcome so much and we'll continue to, you know?
Yeah.
So. Absolutely.
I recently had a conversation with one of our producers, and they were really bummed about this show. Like, they just, in their mind, it didn't turn out the way that they thought it would. And I had a conversation with someone afterwards, and they're like, that show was fantastic. But sometimes we get in our heads that we think that things are just not as good as maybe they are. We're blinded by our own feelings at times. And the producer, had told me right after the show, man, sometimes you win some or you lose some. And I said, or you don't lose, you win or you learn.
Yeah.
And he says to me, he's like, yeah, well, I feel like I've been learning a lot by banging my head against the wall.
Yes.
Like, yeah, that's true.
And that does happen.
That does happen.
There's the reality that, like, just because we win or we learn, it doesn't mean that process is fun.
No.
Or that, like, it doesn't, you don't have days where you're like, I would like to win a little bit more, right?
And sometimes there's this like sidestep that we have to do. Like, I think about, I've had some weird doors open up for me in the comedy world, where I didn't have to do like stand-up, grinding in the stand-up world for 10 years in order to get a featured spot or something like this. Yeah. You can do some sidestepping. If you have the momentum, you miss the wall and you can go through the door. But you just have to there's times where you just got to navigate through that and find, where's my open door? Right. Where's the opening for me? Go through the door. That was one of the greatest words of advice I got from a mentor of mine, was go through the doors that are open to you.
Just jiggle those handles.
Jiggle the handle, baby. Jiggle the handle.
Find which door is a little bit open.
Knock and the door should be open to you. Right? Oh my gosh.
I love it.
I knew you were coming on today, and I woke up. Do you ever get this? I get this sometimes where I wake up in the morning and I get a rush of ideas and I have to write it down.
Brain dump?
Yes.
That's what I do. I do brain dump sometimes.
Okay, so that happened to me this morning. And the idea of our conversation today was, what are we purposed for? And you being brought on that comedy special, I'm so glad. We improvise when things don't go according to plan, which means we have to first have one.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just going to and fro, blown by the wind of chance and possibility. And this verse popped into my head. It's from Ephesians 4:14. So we may no longer be children or small-minded thinking, tossed to and fro by the waves and carried away by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes. And I was just thinking about, like, our GPS. My GPS never tells me to reroute my course when I don't put in my destination. Does that make sense?
Right.
So as an improviser, we often step up onto the stage.
Yeah.
And we don't know what we're going to do.
Right.
But we have learned some tools along the way. We know our end goal is that our audience, we want to leave them with a lot of laughter and a lot of joy.
Yeah.
And we have a set list of, like, these are the games we're going to play, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of in-between interaction with the audience that makes that that freshness come alive, you know? So I'm just curious, when it comes to plotting our course or grabbing our GPS out and putting in our destination, where do you feel like, and I didn't email you or like be like, hey, check out this question. This is off the cuff.
Yeah,
baby.
It is.
It's off the cuff. And one of the reasons I love the title of Off the Cuff is because it seems like those moments in life where we did not plan for it, but we're here and we're present, and you have to make a decision right here in this moment. It's those off the cuff situations that, one, are either really funny, or two, we make a decision that changes everything. Right? I'm a fan of the 49ers. Don't judge me. Brock Purdy, our quarterback, is often, are you a Cowboys fan? Anyways,
Green Bay.
Oh,
yeah, Midwest. Okay. I know nothing else. That's all.
So he's known for his decisiveness. Like they're like, I'm really impressed that this rookie quarterback can look not open, boom, there's my guy, and just throw it very quickly. A lot of times I notice that when we get indecisive, we talk ourselves out of stuff.
Totally.
So to set ourselves up for the game plan, this is what I know I need to do. And I've got options. I can go this, I can throw to this guy, I can throw to that guy, right? Or back to the GPS. I know I'm going here.
Yeah.
And there's different routes to get there, but you can't get there unless you reroute to where you want to go.
Right.
Talk about a moment in your life where a reroute or a destination was either clear or like a moment in time where you had to respond off the cuff and it changed everything for you.
I think in my life, there's been a couple moments like that. I've definitely had seasons where, especially with like what I was going to do for work, you know, what my path was going to be, because, you know, from a young age, I'm like, I'm going to be an actress. I'm going to do the Broadway thing. And those things changed. And it, you know, whether it was like just understanding like, what do I really want? You know, like what is important to me in life? Is it, you know, pursuing this? Is it still getting to do what I love, but also having like a more balanced like lifestyle that I'm seeking? Whether it's like, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of different avenues, but I think for me, I'm trying to think of like a big moment that happened. And it sounds like little, but I think about when we walked through the pandemic, and there was...
I've heard of it.
Yeah. Have you heard of that? Yeah. So we, you know, I work for a church, and we provide children's programming each Sunday. And during that season, you know, we weren't meeting, and we're like, how do we do this? Like, how do we go from, you know, having this live interaction, engagement, connection every single Sunday to now going, okay, here's a video, here we go. And so that was one of those moments where I felt like, okay, we can either go to like the pre-planned curriculum we had bought, send it out, let them see it each week, and just, you know, wish for the best in that sense, or we can get creative and we can think outside the box of like, how can we provide, you know, that connection? Because I feel like that was the part that was really missing, and that people were missing in general across the world. And so it took just some time to be like, okay, let's rework these openers, these like opening scenes. Let's write some things. Like I'm in my home, like, you know, getting a tripod and trying to learn how to like film myself, and then learning how to edit. And then I'm like, let's write some comedy sketches. Let's do some weird characters to make kids laugh. Like, let's have just like guest stars, like trying to figure out how to patch them in. And it was such a season of like we're figuring this out together. But the product that came out, it wasn't perfect, but it was connected. And it was ways for kids to see a familiar face of someone they used to see on a Sunday, be like, oh, they're here and they're encouraging me. And, you know, I had families after we were all back together, like say, you know, the reason that we came here is because we watched you guys online during the pandemic. And just like seeing the impact that had, and that was like God working through me, obviously, but it was just cool to see how making that decision in that moment to be like, okay, are we just gonna send out the stuff that's already prepackaged and ready to go, or are we gonna take the chance, take the time, take the energy to go down this different path? And to see what came out of it was really incredible.
And that's probably where you can have, like how you said earlier, where I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? Right. What's the best that could happen? What's the worst? And now looking back, it's like the seeds that you planted and the ground that you tilled. Now, Rockharbor, where you work at, is an incredibly flourishing church that is now doing 5 services. It's crazy.
Yeah, God's on the move for sure.
My son is part of, as you know, is part of your youth program, and it's cool him seeing like a cross or something. He's always like, Dad, like there's in Boise over the city, there's this cross. And he's like, Dad, is that the cross that God was on? You know, just the mind of a 4-year-old child. And one of the things I've been most frustrated at with my son is that he doesn't like to, or he hasn't liked to pray, like over mealtime. And I've been trying not to get frustrated with him because I don't want to make it a religious experience and have him not like to pray.
Absolutely.
And so I was having a conversation in prayer about it. I was like, what is up with this? And I felt like God was like, let him see you with your Bible open at the table. Let him see you praying, kind of deal. I was like, okay, So just this last week, I spoke at a men's retreat, and there's this little boy who's a friend of mine's son. His name's Nash. And Nash used to hate to pray too. But he doesn't anymore because something happened to where now it's exciting for him. And so Nash is about 10 years old now. And I'm about to speak to this men up at Warm Lake. And Nash raises his hand. He's like, hey, Sean, before you begin your talk, would it be cool if I pray for everybody? And I was like, yeah, sure. And there was another kid, and my son like loves this kid Nash. He looks up to him. So there's this other kid who's like, you're gonna pray? And Nash was like, yeah, dude, I love to pray. Who doesn't love to pray? You know when kids are like, what's your favorite superhero? And you're like, Spider-Man. They're like, yeah, me too.
Totally.
Like, who doesn't love to pray? And the kid's like, yeah, of course. You know. And so, because of Nash's boldness and influence was one of the things I was speaking on. But because of his boldness, the other kid raised his hand the next time I had a talk. And he's like, hey, can I pray? And then my son, who had not liked to pray, was like, hey, Dad, he's 4 years old at a men's retreat, the youngest guy there. Hey, Dad, can I pray? And so he's praying these little, you know. And now we're on a drive or we're at meal and he's like, hey, can I pray? It's just wild.
It just takes like one person, right? It takes one person to like, whether it's someone they look up to or one moment, and it can just flip like that. And it can be something as silly as like doing a funny character to get them to listen to like, wait, what did they say? Oh, that's true. Or, oh, what does that mean? Oh, that makes sense to me. Or it could be seeing someone else do the thing that they haven't done before. And so that's a really cool story. It's cool to hear.
It's wild. Well, and a big thank you to you because he's learning a lot on Sunday mornings.
Well, that's a lot of people. It takes a lot of people to make that happen. So it's incredible.
One thing I want to add, like in Recycled Minds, like we teach people these improv principles, right? And there's not a lot of like religiosity at all to what we do. We do, however, right before a show, we have a tradition of just saying a prayer. And there's something that happens that I love that brings people together. Some people who like prayer is not their part of their life, right? And some people, maybe it's been a while, or some people like yourself and mine, like prayer is an active part of how we go through life. And I think I just want to encourage our audience, especially now. you're listening to this right now, and you might be going through a time of difficulty, and a time where you have a family member or you have a close friend, and maybe the relationship isn't great. I just want to encourage you that prayer is our communication with God. And there's an unlock, and it's something powerful, and it's something good. And you might be listening to this, and prayer is your thing. I want to encourage you to influence other people, because you never know who is out there, whether it's a 4-year-old child like mine, or someone else who's looking up at you. You know, it's like that story of Charles Barkley where he's like, I'm not a role model. Well, he was a role model the minute he stepped on the basketball court, right? So whether we know it or not, we are a role model. So here's to us being active participants and impacting our culture, the people around us, and doing things on purpose. And much like Katie, you have these skills and abilities to make people laugh, to add physicality, and to bring joy and laughter in incredible ways. And your heart exudes, from the stage out into your audience. It's funny, and I want to encourage people to go watch your Dry Bar Unscripted comedy special. As this is being recorded right now, you're featured on Matt Michalowski's comedy special. But we'll leave some clips and some things where people can get a sense and a taste of your comedy, so that they can see more of what you do, so they can welcome you into their house, into their home, so that they can have more joy and more laughter.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but before we go, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience?
I would just say, it's incredible to see how, what you were just saying, we can make such an impact, and we don't even know the impact that we're making. And so just wanting to encourage you guys to, even if you're walking through a tough time, even if you feel like you're failing big time,
fail forward,
and know that you have exactly what you need already inside of you. And so, I think it's just something really important to know during this time. There's a lot going on in this world. There's a lot that can get us down.
One thing I want to say.
Yeah.
You may not have what you need inside of you, and you may need it. And the thing that the person I'm talking about is Jesus.
Yeah.
For me, that's what it was for me. I got wrecked, and I felt like I was rock bottom. And I remember crying out to God and being like, I'm missing something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that something is in the form, I usually don't do this on a podcast, but my point is I feel like some people need to hear it. And I think I've moved for all the things that are going on in our world right now. My heart breaks for just stuff that's going on, whether it's at home or whether it's in Israel. And you need to know that there is love out there for you. And there's other things that are going to entertain you. They're going to distract you, and they're going to make you feel like it's the way. It's not. There is one way, truth, and life, and that is Jesus. And if you've been kicking this down the road and you've been toying with the idea, stop toying with it and hit your knees and start seeking it out. Because time is short. Life is precious. So start getting real and start asking those right questions. And hit your knees and see what happens, because I promise you, if you want growth in your life, you got to start down low. You got to start humbly on the ground and see what depths you can go to, because the tallest of trees have the best of roots.
Yeah. And it's preach it. No, it's so true, because you are so right. There are so many things in this life that distract us, that can pull us, that say that this is who we are, this is what we are, but we are created in the image of God, and we are His. And being able to, when you understand that freedom and the gift that He's given with Him sending His Son Jesus to die on the cross for us, that will change your life forever. It's what makes us look outside of ourselves. It's what causes us to, when I did say you have what you need, it's the Holy Spirit inside of you will give you what you need. And we are what a beautiful life it is to not have to walk through this life alone. So It's true.
Well, hey, you heard it from two improv comedians who had no idea they're going to do a little coaching up on off the cuff.
Yeah.
But that's the episode. It's off the cuff. And when life throws you curveballs and when you find yourself not knowing what to do, Katie and I want to remind you that you're here on purpose, for a purpose, and you might be seeking that out. And I just want to encourage you to find your place in the kingdom. And the best way to find that is on your knees and surrender. It's weird, but it's an upside down kingdom because in surrender, you get everything. So here's to us being people who surrender well so that we can get the crown, so to speak. So anyways, is there anything else you want to say? I think that might have to be the time that we have. Yeah. You guys, I want to thank you for joining us. And Katie, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I had no idea it was going to take this turn, but here's for us hitting it out of the park. So. Thanks again, you guys. We'll see you next time on Off the Cuff.